Afternoon, and thank you for joining us on today's VPK Provider Town Hall meeting. Before we get started, just make sure that you are on mute if you're not muted already. You'll know that you're muted by the diagonal line drawn through the microphone located at the lower left hand of your screen. This is just going to help prevent audio feedback while Jennifer is speaking today. The next thing I'd like you to locate is the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. If you could take just a moment to type in your name and the center you're representing into the chat box. Also, if you have any questions today, since you will be muted during the town hall meeting, please type your questions into that chat box. All right. Thank you.
And it looks like our attendee list.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It seems like all of these town hall meetings are happening at the last minute, so we do appreciate your ability to jump on and join us. And we are recording the town hall, so you'll have the opportunity to share it with others or go back and review it later on if you would like. Today we're going to be talking specifically about the VPK flexible innovative options that are going to be offered from the Office of Early Learning and the Department of Education. Let's see if we can get to our PowerPoint. Thanks, Tanya. I will start off by sharing with everyone that although we're saying please type your questions in the chat box, I do not have a lot of answers for you today. The intent of this is to tell you about some flexible options that are going to be made available to us. We do not have all of the final documents. You'll see that throughout the presentation. So the goal is just to give you an opportunity to start thinking about this information and share it with your colleagues and start to think about what opportunities would be available for you when the final application process is released. So this is really just an introduction to what is going to be made available. Okay, so we'll talk about these options and then go into questions. Thanks, Tanya. So the flexible innovative options. Many of you we have spoken with. I think you've talked with all of us, our team members, or me personally throughout this year, and we've spoken with many parents that have asked about, is VPK virtual? Can we offer virtual VPK? The state has allowed all of the school districts to offer some innovative options, and they are now going to allow the communities that also have these flexible options at the school district to consider those for VPK programs, both public and private programs. So the options will be for the 2021 school year, and the options for innovation and alternate activities are only going to be available through December 31st. So the intent is that this is an added feature to in-person instruction, but it cannot be a replacement for in-person instruction. So what this means is that any provider that is offering or intends to offer any flexible innovative options, they also have to have in-person classes available. We'll go to the next slide, please. Think I can get there? Thank you. The intent of this is to ensure that VPK programs are open and able to continue learning opportunities for children and allow parents to join the workforce. They want to provide choices for VPK parents that mirror those that the K through 12 parents now have due to the DOE approved plans for reopening. And they include structured safeguards that will encourage and shift families to in-person learning. So the intent is to offer these flexible options only temporarily and shift back to in-person learning as soon as possible. So some things that these innovative models, the things we do know right now is there are no waivers on most of the VPK requirements. So they will still have to be delivered. Any options would have to be delivered by qualified staff. They have to have daily contact with the student and their family if they're collaborating with a family to do some type of off-site option. They cannot exceed 270 hours of a 540-hour program. So the intent, again, is to have less than a half a year of this flexible option and return back after December 31st back into the main brick and mortar classroom environment. It must allow students to return to face-to-face learning for the remainder of the program year. So it's 270 hours is approximately half of a VPK year. So they're not allowing these flexible options to go any longer than that 270 hours. So right now, these are the pieces that we know will be required for providers to be eligible to offer a flexible program. First of all, it must align with the district's reopening plan for K through 12 students. So not all districts have plans, but Seminole County Public Schools does have a district reopening plan, and as I'm sure most of you know, that plan does allow for some off-site or home-based instructional options. What that means is that private VPK providers in Seminole County will now also be eligible for this. There are some counties in the state that are only doing in-person classes and only have that at their K through 12, and therefore they would not be eligible to offer flexible options. In Seminole County, you can go to the link is on here, and again, we'll have this available for you, but the link takes you to the Seminole County Public Schools approved plan so that you can see what is available and how it includes a flexible innovative delivery option. You'll notice that I am not using the term virtual. Virtual is not really officially allowed, but they are allowing some off-site flexible options. In other words, virtual, but we're trying to stay away from the word virtual because it's really not completely virtual learning. The provider has to be open, offering in-person VPK in order to have this option. That means you can't shift all of your current VPK classes to an at-home option or a virtual option and close your in-person. You must maintain at least one in-person class in order to offer the other options. Remember that you have to have at least 4 children to offer a class. So again, you can't open a class and then move all but 2 kids out. You have to keep at least 4 children in to open a class. Private providers must be in good standing with the VPK provider contract and have no Class 1 violations within the last 2 years. So if you have had Class 1 violations within the last 2 years, you're not even eligible to apply. There will be a process for submitting, certifying, and approval of the required program assurances. It must be completed via EFS mod for private providers. So they are going to be working on this application and developing it in EFS mod. And then OEL, the public schools will be applying directly to OEL. The Office of Early Learning is managing that for them. Well, there will also be some compliance requirements. You will have to have flex classes via EFS mod, so you'll be establishing the children that are in your flex classes in EFS mod, taking attendance, doing all of those pieces in mod. All right, so in this application process, every provider that it decides you want to do this, and again, the intent of sharing this with you is to give you the opportunity to start to think about this. You have to be able to assure and sign and certify that you will offer equal access to learning and any required materials, including technology. So I know that a lot of our families come from different socioeconomic backgrounds. If you are offering this to the children in your school and you're opening a virtual option for the first half of the year, you have to be able to demonstrate that there is equal access to learning and required materials, including technology. That's a big requirement. And I know we'll get some more guidance on that, but it's something for you to all talk about and start to think about in your own programs. The systems in use have to be secure and won't allow for the release of protected student or staff information. So you have to protect children's private information, email addresses, parents' information, phone numbers, anything that has personally identifiable information. You have to have a secure system and again, certify as such. The programs will have to give ELC and OEL staff access to them. So if you offer and are approved to offer, apply to offer and are approved to offer one of these flexible options, you must be able to allow the ELC staff to log in, to join you, so that we can monitor for compliance for all of the other requirements. Just like in our brick and mortar schools, we actually go in and do some on-site monitoring to make sure that we're meeting all of the standards. The program itself and the standards for the program are not changing, even though these flexible options are being made available because of COVID-19. All programs will have to track daily attendance of both students and staff, again, like you would do normally, monitor the students' performance, and use the VPK assessment. What we are understanding is that right now, the Florida Center for Reading Research that develops the VPK assessment, the AP1, AP2, and AP3 tool, they are developing a methodology that you can use to virtually log in and assess children from a distance. They are in the process of finalizing that, and that will be offered to any of those that are approved to, and we'll train everyone on that as well, if you're approved to offer one of these flexible options. Any tools that you use have to be aligned with the VPK standards, and they have to be developmentally appropriate. Again, we're using taxpayer dollars, we're trying to meet the needs of children and keep their learning going, while families are making very difficult decisions as to the health and safety of their children and whether or not they want to bring them back to in-person classes at this time. So this would make sure that we're replacing in-person VPK with approved curricula. You would be replacing it with tools that have to still be aligned with those VPK standards and that they're still developmentally appropriate. We know that screen time is something that we discourage in VPK programs, but this flexible option, flexible innovative option, it's kind of a tongue twister. Those options are intended to help kids still learn along those same VPK standards and are still meeting them developmentally and all of their needs. So that's something that you would be certifying to and we would be monitoring. The other piece throughout this flexible option is that parents need to understand that they have the opportunity to withdraw their children from an in-person course to transfer to an innovative option, or if the innovative option does not meet the needs of their children, and every parent knows their children's needs the best, they have the ability, if they sign up for an innovative option, they can withdraw and transfer to another program if they choose. So those options are still available to families, and at this time, due to the pandemic, we typically have a limit on transferring one time. Due to the pandemic, there will not be a current limit on those transfers. So again, we want to make sure that you're meeting the needs of the children and the family, but the parents get to make that choice. So I know I've left you with lots of questions. These are the next steps that Office of Early Learning and the Department of Ed are undergoing before we can actually open applications. So I don't have an application to share with you today. I just have those founding principles that we talked about that any program that you offer would have to align with. The first piece is they're going to finalize provider and parent materials. So they're going to actually, Office of Early Learning is going to distribute some materials that outlines in more detail what we've just described. They're going to also have parent materials because parents they're going to want to, all of us, to encourage parents to look at the options available to them and know what their rights are. And I get daily calls from families, I'm sure many of you do as well, asking what options are available. So we're catching up to the K through 12 environment by having these additional options that we can open. They're going to finalize the process for submission of program assurances by eligible for private providers, and then the ELC will review their applications and approve them. And we're approving them jointly with the Office of Early Learning and the Early Learning Coalition. So it's not solely the ELCs that will be approving these applications. It will be a joint process, which is why the application, once it's developed, will be an EFS mod so that both sides can review their respective components. There will be several webinars. Whoops, let's go back for a second. We went ahead too fast. There will actually be several webinars. I timed out. That OEL will conduct for private providers. So they'll have a number of webinars that Office of Early Learning will host. My intent today, again, is just to kind of wet your whistle, get you thinking about your options, looking at your resources, perhaps surveying your families that are already working with you, and determine if there is a need in your program to offer one of these options. And again, you have to have the capability to hold all of these children that you sign up for a flexible option. You have to be able to have a seat for them January 1st or soon thereabouts when the program comes back to brick and mortar. So you can't open a bunch of virtual classes and not have a seat for those children after the end of December. Then we'll disseminate the information to families on all of the flexible options, and we will have some monitoring tools that Office of Early Learning and the ELCs will design to actually monitor through this process for those that are offering flexible options. Okay. So let's go ahead and look. I'm going to look in the chat and see if there are any questions. Again, I don't know that I will have answers to all of your questions, but certainly anything that you think of, if you can list them here, that helps me as we go through our development process with the Office of Early Learning to ask those questions on your behalf. As far as a copy of the presentation, we're actually recording this, so it'll be available for you later on. Okay. Let's see. Seminole County Schools, it says, like Seminole County Schools, can VPK students do hybrid program where a couple of days face-to-face and at-home learning? That is up to you. This is supposed to be a flexible option. So as long as you're able to meet all of the application requirements and you're eligible, we will look at any flexible options that you have available. At this time, I have not seen any guidance that says a hybrid model would not be allowable. So is this a virtual option for VPK? It is a flexible option. Yes, it can be virtual, but it's temporary. It's only a portion of the year, and it's based on also having in-person classes. So you have to have both. Okay. We'll keep looking through our questions. Are we getting a copy, or we'll have it eligible? The video will be posted for all of you. Is there a certain amount of children allowed? The intent here is to make sure that you have space for all of the children. So if you offer a virtual option, you also have to have an in-person option. If you only have one VPK class with 4 children, you would probably not be eligible for this because you have to maintain that in-person class and offer an additional virtual option. As far as the limit on the number of children allowed, the only limit is that as of January 1st, you have to have spaces for those children to return to in-person learning. Okay. Has there been any discussion about absences due to COVID-19? We are paying absences and temporary closures right now after the first day of attendance. So children must attend at least one day through the end of August. I have not had any additional guidance that anything other than the 80-20 rule would apply after the end of August. That could come at the very end of the month if the state or the Office of Early Learning chooses to extend where we pay for additional absences or temporary closures due to COVID-19. But right now, we are only paying for absences or closures after the first day of attendance through the end of August. Okay. I see that there's some programs that folks are asking. Yes, anyone that wants to offer this virtual option will have to apply. The applications are not out yet. The applications I anticipate by the end of August, these options will be made available, but I'm not going to have them tomorrow. So I want you to make sure that you're looking at all of the limitations that they have on this and start to look at your resources. But yes, anyone who wants to offer these options must be applied, and they must be approved by both the Office of Early Learning and the Early Learning Coalition. Okay, if we get approved to be virtual and have in-person, but then a room is closed due to quarantine, Could we still be able to use the virtual for all in the room to maintain attendance? Right now, you have to actually assign children to your flexible options. So they're either in a flexible option or they're in brick and mortar. But remember, you can always change your calendar. So if you have to close for a week due to quarantining, you can always change your calendar and pick up extra days or extend your days when those kids come back into the classroom. But right now, it is not intended to go back and forth between the flexible option and the brick and mortar class. Again, not all of the rules are outlined yet, but it's a good question. I'll certainly share that with Office of Early Learning. The minimum to start a VP class is 4 children. Do we need to have the 4 attending the center, or you must have a brick and mortar class. You have to have a minimum of 1 class that is being offered brick and mortar. Okay. And if you have a 5-hour day, do you have to be virtual that whole time? Again, your flexible options are up to you. If someone already asked about a hybrid model, so what we want you to be able to do is make sure that your model demonstrates equitable access to the information for all children, that you'll be able to bring those children back into the classroom, into brick and mortar after the end of December, and that those flexible options are meeting the needs of the children, they're developmentally appropriate, and they're meeting all of the VPK standards. So again, the intent here is to offer flexible innovation, and that is really up to you and the needs of your children, your staff, and your families. A couple of more. What's the length of the class? That's up to you, but it can't be more than 270 hours between when you start and the end of December. And the remainder of that, the VPK hours would have to be in person. And will we be penalized if a parent participates in the option but decides in January not to send their child to in-person class? Remember, this is a pandemic and the parents have the right to be in person or to remove their child at any time. So at any time, a parent could remove their child or withdraw from the program. If the child doesn't come to in-person class, again, we don't know what the environment will be like in January, but this is in the intent of the Office of Early Learning and Department of Ed. So there's really no penalty, but we won't be paying if that child doesn't attend, or we would be working through that 80-20, paying for up to 20% absences, but we can't pay after January 1st at this time. I have no authority to pay if the child doesn't participate in the class in January. I see, can I have, you're talking about the number of students in a virtual class. If you're offering a virtual option, you're essentially setting up another class, and that class has to have at least 4 students to be established. You have to have at least 4 students to be established in a class. All right, that's a lot of questions. Anybody on the team have anything to add? Any additional questions that you saw that I missed? I'm going to go backwards on our slide presentation just to look at those assurances one more time. I know I talk kind of fast. So, okay, let's go there. So you have to have equal access to the learning. You have to have a secure system so that people aren't going to gain access to the student or family's personally identifiable information. You have to be able to give access to the Coalition and Office of Early Learning. You're still tracking attendance, so you have to think through a methodology to track attendance for students and staff, and you're still going to have to conduct the VPK assessment. The tools still have to be aligned with VPK standards and have to be developmentally appropriate. I will let you know that if I hear of any online tools that peers are using throughout the state, we will try and look at best practices or approved tools and share those with you. But you may find those before I do. But anything that we can do to assist you with this, we'll certainly share resources. but those would be your own costs, just like your curriculum is your own cost. So we're not purchasing alternate tools. And then you have to remind the parents of their ability to transfer if that option doesn't work well for their family for whatever reason. And then we'll move forward one more time. Thanks, Tanya. Oh, move back. We're all over the place. Want to go back to those assurances. Oops, go back one more. Let's see. Go forward one more. And wow, it keeps jumping to the end. Okay, so you are going to have to assure, let's see. You have to have daily contact. You have to have qualified staff. You can't exceed 270 hours. And they have to be able to return to face-to-face delivery after December 30th. Okay. All right, again, this webinar was intended, I'm going to check and see if we have any more messages, but it is intended to tell you what's coming, to give you some opportunities to plan and make sure that you are using technology that's accessible to everyone. Look at your cost, benefit, and the needs of your families. I know many of you have struggled with this as you've started the VPK year. And we are lucky that Seminole County Public Schools did utilize innovative options. They have it in their plan, which means that private providers in our county are eligible to apply for this option. You can't make a requirement that they need a computer if you are not making it accessible to them. You can't add costs to the family. If you're offering a computer, if you're going to use a computer-based system, you would have to make sure that the families have access to those computers, and if they do not, you would have to make it accessible to them. So again, you have to think through the costs and the resources that your families have and make sure that we're offering equitable access to all families that are receiving VPK services. Okay. I know it's a lot of information in a very short time, but again, the intent here was to wet your whistle. If you have additional questions that arise, remember that the full guidance and webinars are coming. But this gives you some opportunity to start to think about what you will need to do and if this is an option that you want to consider within your program. We will notify you through constant contact of the opportunity for the webinars. We will give you the materials as Office of Early Learning releases them, and we'll keep communicating with you about these opportunities as they become available. But we were trying to get to you as quickly as possible to give you some time to plan and to strategize if this is a good option for the children in your families that you're serving. Okay. Right, so the flexible options are kind of open to you. Whatever options that you're interested in. I see that someone asked if they have to be offered via computer, iPad, etc. Not necessarily. We're looking for innovation. We're looking at ways to teach children where they're not directly in front of you. So there are lots of opportunities for you to be creative. I don't know anybody more creative in the world than early childhood educators. So think about ways that you can really reach those children when you can't have them face-to-face. We know that face-to-face learning is by far the best way to teach a lot of the social and emotional skills and interaction with children is really our best method. We've always discouraged technology, but there are lots of ways that you could provide services to children remotely that perhaps don't use technology. So think about that as well as ways that you can reach out to your children and families and meet their needs in this really crazy time. And we will give you more information as it becomes available. And thanks for joining us today. Bye, everybody. Thank you.